I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.074 to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 6:20. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the matters from the floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. We wish to emphasize that this is a business meeting of the board, and while those in attendance may disagree about issues, it is our expectation that everyone will conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner. Disruptions to this meeting by anyone will not be tolerated. In the event any person or group disrupts the meeting, a warning will be given to stop any disruptive behavior. Anyone persisting in disruptive behavior will be removed from the meeting. The board may also call a recess in the event of persistent disruptions so that individuals who engage in disruptions can be removed. It is our intent to conduct the meeting in an orderly fashion. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Sickle from Roosevelt High School.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. My name is Benjamin Sickle. I'm an assistant principal at Roosevelt High School. I am standing in for Mr. Brian Norwood, who is unable to make it this evening. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Aaliyah Masonette, who will be giving our invocation tonight. Joining Aaliyah is her mother, Ms. Carol Masonette. Ms. Masonette, would you please stand? Aaliyah is a senior in the data program at Roosevelt High School who will graduate summa cum laude. Additionally, she's a three-sport varsity letterman who demonstrates leadership as the captain of the Rough Rider volleyball, basketball, and track teams. She is a member of the National Honor Society and explores her love of fashion through the FCCLA Club. At this time, Aaliyah continues to explore numerous college options. It is also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Grayson Christian, who will be reciting the pledge tonight. Joining Grayson this evening is his father, Coach Anthony Christian, and his brother, Desmond Christian. Would you please stand? Grayson is a junior at Roosevelt High School who currently projected to be a cum laude graduate in 2023. He is a member of the National Honor Society, a trusted manager on the Rough Rider football team, and has won several citizenship awards. Grayson enjoys cooking and making new friends. After graduation, Grayson wants to pursue a career as a chef. Aaliyah, at this time, will you please give the invocation?
Good evening. Dear God, as I open up this meeting, I pray that we place our work and ourselves into your hands. Anoint our creativity, our ideas, our energy, so that even the smallest task may bring your honor. God, when we are challenged, guide us to make proper decisions that continue to benefit students, teachers, and our community members. Bless the administration with wisdom and discernment, and our employees with commitment, compassion, and strength. Let the work done here be for your glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Aaliyah. Grayson, will you lead us in the pledges?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Aaliyah and Grayson, will you please come forward? We have a certificate for you, and then we'd like to take your picture with Miss Williams. I had the certificate. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It was a great job. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, she's going to ask your certificate. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And y'all are more than welcome to leave because I'm sure that you have homework and everything else that needs to be done. Thanks again. Item 6, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. If you sign up to speak on a specific agenda item, you will be called up when the board reaches that item. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Ms. Huey. So I think we just call him. I think we do 2 and 3.
Number 2.
Hi, my name's Luke Rosenberg, and I live in Mr. Byers District. In the discussion of the library materials review during the December 13th board meeting, Ms. Winkley actually was the first one to request a list showing the status and disposition of all the items included in that review. Dr. Micah committed to providing a full accounting of the status and disposition of all 414 items included in that review. At that point in time, which was apparently about 1 to 2 weeks into the review, 252 of the 414 items had already completed review. So just over 60% completed in those first couple of weeks. 8 additional weeks have now passed with no update from the district. It is time for the district to uphold its stated commitment to transparency in this process. In his remarks of December 13th, Dr. Micah indicated that any report on the materials review could be, quote, a living, breathing document, end quote, because of the potential for information to evolve as the process progressed. He also seemed to suggest that the 414 item review might be only the beginning of 1 or more larger review processes to take place in the future. So I therefore call upon the board and the district leadership to begin publishing a regular monthly report on reviews of instructional resources. This monthly report should include, at minimum, a list of all instructional resources, including library materials, that are being or have been reviewed, reconsidered, removed, and/or relocated following any process other than local policy EF. It should indicate information on how the review of that item originated, its current status, and its disposition. It would not be necessary to include materials reviewed under the standard process of local policy EF. That standard process is transparent and self-documenting as defined, and that documentation is available through Public Information Act requests. The specific gap or shadow that needs to be enlightened involves reviews that occur for any reason outside the local policy EF process, such as the 414 items discussed at the December meeting. So I thank you in advance for recommitting the district to transparency by issuing such a monthly report. Thanks.
Number 3. Good evening, President Grona, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I'm Patsy Esterline, president of the Northeast AFT at 10615 Perrin Vital, Suite 203, San Antonio, Texas 78217. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you all for giving up time with your loved ones to be here to make important decisions for the good of students, teachers, and staff. Thank you for considering wage payments during the recent school closures. As we know, teaching now in the pandemic has been challenging. It's the right thing to do, and Northeast AFT heartily agrees with this consideration. Thank you for considering another retention supplement payable in March. As we know, teaching now in the pandemic has been challenging. This will help staff with the increased prices of food, gas, and utilities. It should boost employee morale. Please make this retention supplement a significant amount. Thank you.
Item 7, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. A, Director of Risk Management and Safety. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item B, Director of Web Application Development. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item C, Assistant Principal of Churchill High School. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding rescission of proposed termination of term contract employee RL. Do I have a motion to approve the rescission of the proposed termination for the identified employee's Chapter 21 term contract as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 8, presentations. A, public hearing for the 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report. Mr. Jarrett.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Micah, members of the board, executive staff, and guests. I would like to ask Alex Bardell to come forward for this agenda item.
Good evening, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. So the Texas Education Code Section 39306 requires each district's Board of Trustees to publish an annual report on a variety of performance objectives, and tonight is the required public hearing and discussion of our annual report. I will be presenting the 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report and other various aspects of district performance. And before I begin, it's important to note that we'll be sharing the newest publicly available state and district data and some of this data comes from the 2019-2020 school year, and other sections come from the 2020-2021 school year, but I will clarify the source and the year as we move through the slides. So, as you may recall, the Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPR, is an annual report provided by TEA that pulls together a wide range of information on the performance of students in each school and district in Texas. These reports also provide information on school and district staff, programs, and student demographics. So, to start with some of those student demographics, you can see here how we compare to the state, with the state data represented in gray and the district in blue. And as you can see, we are fairly close to the state across most demographics, with the biggest discrepancy being that we are slightly lower in economically disadvantaged. Moving over to student enrollment by program, you can see how we compare to the state again. And it should be noted that this enrollment data is based on the October 2020 snapshot that was reported to TEA, but by the end of that school year, we actually had 8.7% GT. So we exceeded it by the end through our new measures of inclusion. So as we move on to STAR performance, the first column on this slide here, you can see the overall score for all subjects combined. And as you can see, across all subjects and in each subject, NEISD outperformed the state across all STAR last year. So that is a moment of celebration. Yeah. Hey. And as we dig into ELA and reading by grade level, you can see, and DOC, you can see that we scored above the state in every single grade level and the EOCs as well for ELA and reading. All right. In mathematics, again, we're either meeting or exceeding the state performance with one exception, and that's 7th grade. And so if you can't read that note, it's that about half of our 7th grade students actually take a harder math test. So they're either taking the 8th grade math test or the Algebra 1 math test. And so those are our highest flying, most advanced students. And so that's not happening everywhere in the state. And so the state has sort of a different representation because their students are different than our students. They're taking that test there. And writing, which is given in grades 4 and 7 currently, we exceeded the state again. And in high school, writing is embedded into the English 1 and English 2 end of course assessments. Social studies and U.S. history is, social studies is administered in 8th grade, and U.S. history is an end of course exam given at the high school level, typically in 11th grade. And again, this is a moment of celebration where the district continues to outperform the state in both levels. Science and biology, again, this is administered in 5th and 8th grade, and the biology is an end of course exam in high school. And again, we continue to see that we are exceeding the state. All right, so moving on to advanced course or dual credit completion. This slide represents 9th through 12th grade advanced course completion in any subject. These percentages are based on students who completed and received credit for at least one advanced or dual credit course. Course completion is reported to TEA at the end of the year, and so that's why you'll notice here we start to have class of 2020 data, because that is not getting reported as early as the previous data. And the same is going to be true for the rest of the TAPR data that's presented tonight. You'll see that it's class of 2019-2020, or that's the most recent. And again, we're exceeding the state. It's just redundant. All right. So here we've got attendance compared to the state, and it's pretty much in line. And the only thing I would note here, again, because this is 2019-2020, this is when in March we went to a pandemic switch up. And so that 98.3% and that 97.8% are anyone's best guess. Not to be concerned about. Moving over to graduation. Again, we see that class of 2019, class of 2020 is the newest data that we have, but we are continuing to exceed the state levels, and this is another great celebration for the district. All right, so CCMR, or College, Career, and Military Readiness. These rates are based on the percentage of annual graduates who demonstrate CCMR readiness by meeting at least one of these criteria. And a student can meet criteria across multiple categories. So if you're trying to do the math and seeing that they don't add up, that's why. And again, this is the class of 2020, so it's only looking at the graduates from class of 2020. All right, so moving on, aside from TAPR in the annual report, we are going to be talking about NEISD graduates' attendance at Texas post-secondary institutions, and this information is reported by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and not TA or TAPR. So as we can see here, this table shows NEISD graduates who attend higher education institutions inside Texas. And I have to be specific about that because that means that that not found line there includes students who attended higher education institutions outside of Texas, Stanford, Harvard, etc., and students for whom no record is found. All right, so next up we have our misconduct and incident report, and we have our excellent Executive Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Christy Wilbur, to present on that.
Thank you.
Push forward.
A couple things, first of all, good evening. A couple things to point out on this. Last year when we came to you, we pointed out that in 1920, we had an asterisk by 1920, as Mr. Vardell has just pointed out, because we went into the pandemic at that time. Likewise, within the data, when you see one asterisk, that's because the data is fewer than 5, and to protect the privacy of those children under FERPA, it's marked with an asterisk. We added 2 asterisks on 2021 because, again, that data is a little bit lower since we had virtual last year. For the start-in, we had the bulk of students virtual and slowly transitioned them back to in-person. So the data that's represented here is lower than previous years because we had fewer students at the school during that time. We wanted to make sure that there was asterisks there to denote both grade levels because as we come back in for data for 21-22 school year, as we know all students are back in person, so the data could be viewed in different light. The biggest thing to point out in all areas, as in 1920, we went down in areas. In 2021, we went down significantly in most areas in all of these levels as well.
Are there any questions? I mean, that's really it for either Christy or myself at this point. I know you've had time to review the information.
Questions?
I have a quick question about the math percentages on the
Yes,
star.
sir. Yeah.
And I know we've talked over the last couple of months in this room about the struggles in math throughout different levels
There we go.
class. And the 7th grade one I know has been one that we've seen a couple of times in
Right.
improvement plans and that type of thing. When we talk about some of these kids actually taking 8th grade math, and so that's going to siphon off a certain percentage that are not going to count towards this 7th grade. Is that correct? Or I guess they count towards the 7th grade. But
So
they're just taking harder
essentially,
math.
if you think of like the axis on the bottom, that's the test that they're taking, not the grade that they're in. And so essentially, that's not all of our 7th graders. That's just who's taking the 7th grade test.
Got it.
So our 7th graders are also in the 8th grade column there and the Algebra 1 column.
So do we think going forward we're going to maybe see this 7th grade test?
It will probably look kind of like this unless the
Generally like
state
this?
also moves to a more accelerated model that we're trying to move to, where we're getting those students,
Got it.
who are advanced earlier moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I've got one. Can you go to slide 5, please? The approaches things.
Sure.
I was listening to the presentation. It was good to hear that the Northeast students are, above state averages.
Yes.
I guess the question I have is, what specifically, it's probably for you, Mr. Jarrett, I'm guessing, it might be you, Mr. Vardell, but what specifically is being done differently to work towards those better outcomes and results for the students, particularly the 25, 40% that are obviously not approaching the grade level, the white gap up there at the top part.
Yeah.
What are we doing for them in that 7% that aren't graduating, generally speaking, year over year? Are there anything unique or new that we're trying approach-wise?
So, I mean, a variety of things are tried at the campus level, but essentially just to kind of give some context of some actions taken this year. This year we implemented MAP testing, as you guys recall, at the beginning of the year, and then we just completed our middle of year MAP assessment. The goal behind that is so we know exactly where kids are at this time of the year and giving campuses enough time to create new innovative plans to target those specific kiddos that are not showing progress. So to say one thing specifically wouldn't be absolute because I think every child has a unique need, and so campuses are adjusting accordingly.
Okay. And then is there that process to coordinate between the teachers and campus admin and the parents of those students that aren't meeting standards to work on the specific needs of each student?
Yes, sir.
We have a process in place?
So if you recall also by House Bill 4545, and as we're still trying to navigate that, campuses are also creating independent plans for kiddos who didn't show mastery on grades 3, 5, and 8, I believe,
Okay.
on STAR. And those particular kids have plans described for them, but they also take care of kids that may not be in those grade levels as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? Can we go to the CCMR?
Yes.
And only because we celebrate all these things where we're better than the state, and then this one is like, "Ew."
Yes, and
So-
I know, yep, go ahead, sir.
So would anyone like to speak to it?
Yeah, I could probably speak to all of them. So what you'll notice, and this is the way you have to look at the CCMR, there's a couple of points to point out. You have dual credit, you have AP, and then you have on-ramps. All of those are college credit earning courses. So when you have AP programs that are thriving, you're going to have less kids enrolled in dual credit, per se, or on-ramps, because you can't be in all the different courses. The other challenge that our campuses continue to have is hiring qualified dual credit teachers. So your dual credit numbers automatically drop because you don't have people who qualify for it. Hence was the implementation of on-ramps, because you're not required to have a master's degree to teach on-ramps, but you do have to attend a 2-week training at UT Austin, and then you have to do frequent updates with UT Austin, and they actually get the college credit from the UT Austin professor. And our teachers essentially are facilitating that particular grade. So they essentially get 2 grades. And so what we're doing is diversifying our college offerings so no child just has one vehicle in order to have a college education.
Okay.
And I guess you want more. So then industry-based,
No,
my apologies.
No.
Sorry.
No.
So
No.
IBCs, let's talk about that one.
IBCs.
So,
No. Seriously, no, for real.
You're good?
Hold on
Okay.
just a minute. I was trying to formulate my next question.
okay, I will pause and wait for that.
Pause. Yes, so I guess it is how it's the bold line that says career military-ready graduates 18.7 versus 9.2.
Yeah.
So the ones below it are what
Yes,
make
ma'am.
that 9.2? Okay.
That is correct. So the 9.2 is the IBC, which is industry-based certification, and then students with special needs graduate IEP, college, workforce readiness, and the CTE coherent sequence.
That'll be good.
During this time when this was done, we had about 230, I believe, 30 IBC industry-based certifications that was acquired. This past summer, we had over 790. So we've made an intentional effort, and I think it was just more targeting to make sure kids are taking the industry-based certification exams, but also the state made an adjustment because they had a lot of industry-based certifications that was targeted towards male students and minimal on the female students. So there's been an adjustment made there as well.
Okay.
And one other thing, just to back up on that, because this is class of 2020 data, we've made, adjustments. We've seen these issues and we've taken action already, but because we have to look so far back in the rear for the official reports, it's hard to see our actions until, much further down the line.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, let me just get this straight. For when you were talking about, Mr. Jarrett, the industry-based certification, it's because the number of kids not taking them or taking them and not passing? I mean,
They have to take an MPAS, so
Okay,
essentially
okay.
earning an industry-based certification. And so our CT department and Dr. Munoz and her team have been really working hard at pushing the understanding of that. And so students are now taking more assessments and being able to have a certification
Okay.
as well as a high school diploma, and they could take that to college with them.
because I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it can be quite challenging to pass an industry-based certification because it's extensive. But I'm not, you know.
Some are harder than others.
Sure. Yeah.
But yes, some of them are pretty arduous for a high school kiddo to take.
Okay.
But they have various certifications. Some don't count towards the industry-based certification.
okay.
They're almost like a building block.
Sure.
So they won't count in this, but we do have a lot of certifications that kids can earn while they're in high school.
Okay. Right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
for the
Happy
present-
Valentine's Day. too.
Yes, thank you. Item 9, Board Business A, possible action regarding order of election for May 7, 2022 general election. Dr. Micah.
She's almost to the podium. I'm going to turn this over to Deb Caldwell, our Executive Director for External Relations. Ms. Caldwell?
Thank you, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Micah, Executive Staff, and guests. I'm bringing to you tonight the order of election. The actual order is in your packet, but I do have a few highlights. I've got the. We have a general election as a state on May 7th. Northeast ISD will hold an election on that day for trustee positions 2, 3, and 7. This is the normal time that those terms are up. Those are 4-year terms. We do conduct joint elections with the Bexar County Elections Department as well as other entities that are participating on the May ballot. And this is a state constitutional ballot. So every entity across the state is going to be participating in this election on May 7th. But there are some other groups as well who are on the ballot. This is the first election using our new single-member district maps. So I think that's important for our community to know that just because they may have voted in single-member District 3 in the past does not mean they still are in single-member District 3. So please go and check that on our website. Our board election page has all the information about the elections as well as the notices that we are required to post. Some key dates for you to be aware of as a board. The deadline to actually order the election is the 18th of February, which is why we're doing it tonight, ahead of that deadline. The last day for candidates to file is this Friday, the 18th. We will be conducting a board candidate orientation on the 21st, which is our normal practice, and then we will draw for places on the ballot. That's something that entities that are conducting elections have to do. That will take place on the 28th of February. The last day for citizens to register for the May election is April the 7th. First day of early voting is the 25th, and that goes until May the 3rd, and election day is on the 7th. In your packet, I also want to bring attention to there is a early voting schedule and locations that was provided by the Bexar Elections Department. Those are subject to change. We are quite a ways out. If Bexar County does change this information, we will bring that back to you as an amended early voting locations. And that is it.
Any questions for Deb? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the attached order of election for the May 7, 2022 trustee elections?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you,
you.
Deb. Item 10, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy update 118, first reading. Dr. Micah.
So, as you know, or as I explained at a previous board meeting, Update 118 was rather sizable. So there were a lot of legal updates that went in. As you know, those legal just go in. We don't vote on those, or I should say you don't vote on them. They just go in. So what we have this evening for you are all of the local policy changes for CFD, CQB, DFE, DP, EHAA, EHBC, EIE. I know it sound like EIEIO, right?
I was waiting
even
for
I
it.
heard that.
Waiting for it.
I know now I'm trying to think what else we could say. FDE, FEA, FEC, FFG, and FL. Staff is here for any questions that you all may have regarding those policy update changes to our local policies.
Okay, questions?
Starting with CQB, and it carries through, but they are lining out, it says the board delegates, it's on page number 36. The board delegates to the superintendent or designee the authority to whatever. And they are now crossing out or designee again. Do we know why they're doing that? Or can we review why they're?
Because, Ms. Huey, I know this has come up a couple of times, and I noticed that as well, that we keep putting a lot of everything on the superintendent.
Yeah.
And it seemed very specific for some reason. So
If
I
we
don't
could
be-
find out
if
why
there's
they're
a way to get an
eliminating
answer
the
to that.
designees, it seems like that's a very,
Yeah, I saw that as well, Miss Huey. Those are the recommendations coming out of TASB, but let us reach out and ask specifically why they're eliminating the designee piece. Could be that it's in statute, and it just identifies me.
okay. It just seems to me that if there's more eyes on a situation, then it's easier to follow. And if you're responsible for all of it, then, I don't know.
Peggy, will you make a note for me to give TASB a call tomorrow, please? Thank you.
Then on page 38, under principal qualifications, they're striking 3 years of experience as a classroom
38.
teacher. I know that's
38 of
Page
this.
page 38,
Package.
under DP local. Sorry. Line number 6, 3 years experience as a classroom teacher. I didn't understand a good reason to do that. I know that I can't imagine we'd have a principal that didn't really have classroom experience. That just seems counter.
Miss Huey, you have superintendents with no classroom experience.
That's different.
Well, I'm just letting you know. I mean, truly.
I understand that, but it's pretty rare. Yeah, pretty rare. But a
Not as
principal,
rare as you would think. It's becoming less and less rare.
I don't think it's worked where it did.
I mean, look, for us, that can state it in there, but understand when, executive staff and myself are interviewing for principals, we're looking for qualifications.
That was kind of where I was going
Correct.
with that.
I mean, we're going to want them to have some experience in a classroom.
Yeah, we're not taking it away, but it's not in policy. Is that kind of where we're gonna? Correct. Okay.
It's practice now.
I'm trying to see if I had any more yellow highlights in here, and I think the or designee was I had a ton of those, so I think I'm okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, okay. On CFD local, under use and expenditure, I'm not sure who, this is the student activity funds. I have a recommendation that we add a sentence, and this is really just more for transparency with the parents, but something to the effect that says either once or 2 times per year, each school year, every sponsor will provide a list of all the funds and how they were spent to all the parents of the students in that club organization, so that they know where the funds are, all the fundraising activity that the parents and kids do. They have an idea and kind of see where the money's going. Because I know there's a big accounting, but I don't know that it's necessarily pushed out. And that way it makes it a standard process across all organizations and clubs with the fundraising that comes in for consideration. Because I don't believe that's happening consistently.
Mr. Villarreal, I'm looking at you.
Because I know they changed. Okay, go ahead. Sorry,
Were you asking if we can bring to you all twice a year, or is it through the sponsor?
My opinion is the sponsor should send to the parents of that organization the funds they collect, because they're tracking all the stuff, and then how they expended it, so there's clarity on, those kids and parents spend a lot of hours and ask family and friends to raise funds, which is great, but then they go, oh yeah, we went out and purchased whatever, either equipment or whatever extra funds, because these are different than district tax dollars. But just so that it's a clarity, a transparency with the parents, so they have an understanding. Because I don't know that that's happening. Actually, I know it's not happening in some organizations, and I think it might help.
Yeah, I think some of the organizations that you might meet very irregularly. I mean, there's a lot of clubs and student activity accounts.
Yeah.
Some are more participated than others. But I mean, a lot of it goes through what the principal wants to do. I mean, we can, as a district, and I guess working with internal audit, we can try to set up some parameters for them to be able to report out every 4 months, at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the
Should
year.
be like, if you're going to do that, it should be a yearly thing.
Yeah, what's a year even?
And I think those organizations, if they have bylaws, then they should be dealing with that on their, probably in their organization. Are each of these audited every year as well?
Yes, sir. And that's the thing. I think they pull some to look at it a little closer, but I mean, all of them have to submit and they have to follow a certain reporting process for us. But I think, like you were saying, each organization does have their own bylaws and how they report out. I think what you're asking is
make a standard district-wide process for
Right.
all clubs and organizations once a year to communicate to the parents, because I understand it's audited and we see the money, but so that parents have that understanding of where that time and money is being spent. It's building into transparency and that community kind of, collaboration and trust. They go, oh yeah, and then next year when they go fundraise, hey, yeah, last year it helped get the team uniforms or extra whatever it is, or new band instruments, whatever it is. But to me, it's that building clarity with the community.
Yeah, so Mr. Hilliard, let me do this. Let me spend a little time looking over how many organizations we actually have, and then can we build a system? Because some of these folks, for some of these clubs, don't even get paid to do it. And so we're going to have to figure out a way that we would be able to do it so that I'm not asking a club sponsor that doesn't get paid to spend time reporting something.
I understand. Well, it says now the new requirement is the principal and the sponsor, so it might be via the principal.
Right.
I'm not trying to load more work up, but this to me is just one of those way we communicate back to all the parents of what their kids' activities are, their club and organizations. Because I'm thinking the bigger ones that do lots of fundraising, I do realize there's smaller ones that maybe don't do that. So I understand.
But I guess, in my opinion, that could be something that those organizations could. I don't know that we need a district-wide policy for that. My personal feeling, because you are dealing with a lot of just volunteers who, if you're asking them to put together some reporting, that if I'm a parent, I'm going to go to that sponsor or that organizer and say, hey, let me see what are you spending that on? And then if I have a concern with that, I've got mechanisms to go through that. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's. I think that's an individual club and school responsibility, and not necessarily a district policy that needs to be handed down to everybody, because you may get a fishing club that meets once a year, and then and you may have two people and one of them forgets to do it, and then they're in violation of that policy, and they don't have any ill will towards not doing it, they just didn't get around to doing it.
Well, then I would offer maybe we put a limit or cap if your club organization raises more than $10,000 or $20,000 or some threshold, because that way we have that clarity. So parents don't have to. I mean, to me is we're doing that proactive communication with our parents and their kids and their activities organizations. But maybe it's a threshold thing, because obviously a two-person club is different than the Reagan band that has 350 members and does.
Well, and this may not be clubs. This may.
Yeah, I mean, or organizations too. And there's other organizations, not just. This thing covers a lot, and since we're not going to probably revisit this policy, last time was 2009, we may not see this for 10 or 15 years. Do we want to put a process in as we're moving towards just best practices for clarity?
I have a question. It says that the student activity funds shall be included in the annual audit. I mean, wouldn't that, if we wanted to review that audit, wouldn't that show us what that money was spent on? Or
no, sir,
No,
not
okay.
in that detail.
Okay. Yeah.
Usually they just pull samples and look at some of the spent in our comprehensive annual report. We external auditors go and they do tests of some of those activity accounts. But I mean, it doesn't give you the detail. I mean, they have the detail, but they don't publicize the details.
But I think the point Mr. Hilliard's trying to make is he wants it available to parents.
Yeah, it's communicate, and I'm nothing significant fancy. Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I think we need to do a little bit more research.
Okay.
And
Yeah, this is just first reading, so maybe we can research and discuss it if we can.
So what I'll do is I'll take a look at how many clubs and organizations we have, and I'm going to look at, are there certain ones that have, to your point, right, a threshold of some saying, you know what, right here we can do, and then in the process, Mr. Villarreal and his folks can look at, is there a way, is I guess my thing is I don't want my you brought up Reagan Band. I don't want my Reagan Band instructor spending, a bunch of time doing it. But if there's a way that we can do it that's transparent, that shows people, hey, this is what it is through a system that we're already using, Mr. Villarreal, then maybe that's it, that it just kind of draws. It's kind of like, grades and things that are updated automatically, is maybe we're just able to extrapolate that information and post it up.
And you had a good point as far as trying to get these volunteers, because sometimes these clubs, they change over every year. So, try to make it as simple as possible for them, because, some of these are getting like $200, $300 a year. They're not making a lot of dollars. Right. So we'd have to try to differentiate between, the higher. And internal audit, they also look at some of the higher dollar ones. They do not audit them every year because there's so many of them, but they do look at them. So, but yes, we can try to figure out a process to try to help the volunteer teacher, whoever's running that organization, and to simplify it as best possible.
Yeah. Because I know, I'm looking at Dr. Mitchell, former auditor, because we talked about this. I know as a former auditor, right, you all pulled the bigger clubs and organizations because that's really where the money was. And I think to your point, Mr. Hilliard, that's kind of what we're looking for, is where the bigger dollars are spent, right? We're not going to worry about the $200 fishing club. We're more worried about, hey, you're pulling in a band. It's hundreds of thousands.
I remember there was a $39,000 from one parent last year for one of those Reagan things that we, it's just clarity with the parents.
But I do believe that some of those booster clubs are doing that, because I know that in my previous high school life, there was accounting of that to the parents that would go to those meetings. So it could be that it's being done and you just don't know about it. Or maybe the organizations that you're involved in are not doing it.
Fair enough. That's why I just want to make it consistent, process-driven, whatever that looks like going forward, because these policies get hit about every 10 years or so.
Okay.
Just consideration that we look at and see if there's a way, because they're already tracking information, just a way to quickly post it or get it out to the parents.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and we're also, there's school-sponsored stuff versus booster club stuff, and so that's, booster clubs are operating at their own, and if you're involved in that and you have involvement in that, you go to the booster club president or treasurer and you say, I want to see what you're spending the money on.
Well, I'm just thinking it's the ones under the policy, student activities organizations that this falls under.
Yeah.
Because you're right, the boosters may have a separate set of bylaws and charter they're working on.
Yes, 100%. So, I want to be careful with putting, because it's sometimes parent involvement and that kind of thing. They have every right to ask for whatever information they want. So, I don't know. We'll, I guess, see what information we get back and where that goes.
The booster clubs are separate than our student activity fund.
Correct.
That's
what I want to make sure we're not confusing those.
That's a good clarification point, because I'm just talking about what's listed, the student club and organizations that tied to CF.
One of the controls we do have is our bookkeepers are trained as far as when checks are requested and deposits are made. So there are some eyes on them at all times. But like I said, it just means some of them are really small. They might not have that much activity.
Okay. Yeah.
We check registers can also be published. We can show what checks have been cut and things of that type. So it's kind of like our reporting. Ours every month are on our website of what we spent money on. So.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else?
I did. The only other one was EHA local, and so in.
Can you tell me a page?
I'm sorry. It's page 8. I'm looking at 86 is what I printed out, but I know there's the double print, so it might be. I print out page 86 off our packet, but there's EHA local, the basic instructional program, required all levels.
Okay.
39 or
39 and what did you say, 80?
86 is the duplicate copy, but so under number 2 and number 3 it talks about a public meeting, and I think we should. These are, I think I have like 5 suggestions. We maybe want to clearly articulate that because this number 3, obviously we're talking about a board meeting when they present at a board meeting, but this other shack public meetings, I think we should either say it's going to be at a board meeting or it will be held in a similar fashion. Because right now, the SHAC has meetings for those that don't know, but parents can go, but they're not allowed to speak. So I think we need to clearly define in this particular policy the 2 public meetings, make sure that they're widely publicized, 5 to 14 days prior, because this is kind of, I would say, very almost high level and almost not very specific policy-wise, that we may want to make sure we're very clear that we say the meetings, we're going to widely publicize them. We're going to specify one of the public meetings be held at night because of the working parents that may not be able to come during, because normally the SHAC meets during the day.
Can I interrupt for
yeah.
just a minute? Are we getting in the tactical, or are we staying at the strategic?
This is board, I would say this is strategic because this is our board policy we get to set one time how we want everything to operate somewhat tactically to make sure that we have clarity with the parental
Because I'm just
involvement.
thinking maybe the policy does not need to be as specific as what the process would be that they follow. Oh, go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry. Keep going.
I guess this is the process though, right? This is the local policy. Because remember we had the conversation, we have to publish a policy, what the process is going to be. This is the process as far as I can tell. I mean, if someone has a different opinion, there's the legal piece, and I print out the legal, and it hits some of the requirements, but this is how we say we want Dr. Micah to operate via the SHAC facilitator and then the SHAC parents, because this is our board. So
Okay.
to me, I think this is an important one, since this is one of the 2 boards that work directly or come from us, that and CBAC. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear about the meeting schedule, because if they do it during the day, parents won't be able to come. And we can make sure this is going to happen, but I really think we just need to make sure all those opportunities for the parents to speak are made available, obviously well publicized, and then also make sure via the superintendent that all the home campuses have sufficient curriculum for review like a month prior. Because right now the health textbooks are under review for those that don't know, which falls under the SHAC, yet everyone's having to go to the sports park. They're not able to get at their home campus. The law specifically talks about just the human
I
sexuality
think it
material.
just has to be made
But it's-
available.
Sure. Now, the only thing I would say there is the samples are subject to the vendor. We don't get to say, hey, we want 150 copies of your stuff. So I could see that may become an issue.
Okay.
Because again, depending on the number of vendors that are, whichever curriculum it is, we don't get, and I'm thinking, Mr. Jarrett, even going into curriculum, we don't get unlimited supplies of review materials.
No, each campus.
That's why
is-
we have to kind of
right.
consolidate.
Each campus will get materials to review.
Yeah, but see, with health, I don't know. I'll have to. That's a good question to ask, though. Is how many samples can?
Well,
we
and I mean, this
get?
is from EHA Legal, the availability of materials, copyright materials, which this all is, review the materials at the student's campus during regular times, which means it has to be made available for parents. They shouldn't have to go to the sports park. And there's also online ways to do it to make sure the copyright infringement's not done. But, I mean, this is the law. We have to provide this, so I
Dr.
don't think.
Mendoza can
Okay.
probably speak
Yes,
to
so
Yeah.
I have some information on that.
Okay.
So prior to Rachel Naylor's departure from the district, I worked alongside PE Health specifically for this reason, for the proclamation to be much like what we did with pre-K. And I know that we gave you all a very structured booklet on how the adoption process went through. And so we went in addition to that with SHAC, because that is part of their legal and binding rule that they have to be able to provide that. But we made it a very specific point with all of the vendors to provide every single campus with a resource for them to review, and they provided that.
Okay, so we do have it every campus?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. That's perfect, and that answers that question. I just want to make sure since we don't do this very often, that all parents have access, and that's convenient to wherever they live within the district, and any parent from any grade can get to it. So,
Are there some of the, and Mr. Hilliard, you may know this, some of the information you're talking about, because I know we have to have at minimum 2 public meetings, and I don't have the House bill in front of me, but isn't some of the information about adherence to notices and that type of thing spelled out in that House bill that we would have to follow by law anyway, to say you have to give X number of hours for notice and all that kind of stuff?
to answer your question, no, it's on page 10 of EHA Legal, and it just says, after the board's adoption of the resolution, hold 2 public hearings on curriculum materials before adopting recommendations, and provide the adopted recommendations to the board at a public meeting of the board. And the board, after receiving the recommendations, can take action to adopt it by record of vote, and that's it. And it says CBDF, but we don't, obviously that's BDF legal. So there's just a couple simple steps to answer your question. That's what I was looking for, to see what was put in the legal, to see if it covered it, why we didn't need it in the local, because there was significant changes to the local. But since the SHAC covers health, obviously we got sex ed, and then the new dating, violence, all that, all new material.
Right.
We need to have this process, I would offer, consistent and make it very process-driven and very clear how we're going to communicate to the community, get the parents, feedback so that everybody has it. Because obviously this can be a very personal issue for a lot of people and sensitive, so we just want to make sure we have good feedback from everybody and everybody can look at it if they so choose. And if they don't, we followed the law and made it available. And so to answer your question, Mrs. Groen, I understand we say it at the board, but this is our policy, and we need to make sure that we have clarity. And then the last question, under number 3, it says, after the board ensures recommendations from the SHAC meet the standards in the law, how are we going to ensure, how are we as a board, obviously, there's all these curriculum are hundreds of pages, how are we going to have some sort of verification that it meets the standard of the law, SB 22 requirements, all those things. I'm open for ideas from the other trustees or how we're going to do that, but how's the SHAC staff, parents, the district staff going to ensure that we have confidence we do that? Because obviously that can be a concern.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that as well.
Okay.
Because we use the word ensure, and I'm not an attorney,
Right.
but I can take a law and go side by side. So I might agree just to, for our own sake, make sure that we're comfortable with whatever we're saying is legally binding or we meet the letter of the law. I don't know how we fashion that, but that might be something we did look into to add.
Yep.
We've turned the mic off.
So, Mr. Hilliard and Mr. Byer, I think one of the things that we can look at for the ensuring of it is looking at maybe some type of rubric that's based on House Bill 1525 and also EHAA, which was based on House Bill 1525. So that way, that rubric, we can know that we have gone through each of those steps. That's one way to do it. Our director for PE and Health has not actually, she's been working kind of a dual role right now. And so we're hoping that she can spend more time, because obviously at the campus, that's really where we want her to spend her time, to make sure that she's taking care of kids. But when she's able to come full time with us now with this appointment, that might be sooner than later, which is great. That can definitely be a piece that we're working through on there. But I'm thinking a rubric might help to ensure that those pieces are covered and to ensure the board sees that.
And for consideration, the rubrics too would be any concerns, red flags from any parent and or staff as part of that presentation to the board, so we hear all of the feedback. We should with the multiple meetings. I think we're going to naturally have a lot more feedback available.
I would think the rubric would just be what the law is,
right,
and what sections, how we meet that, and not.
Okay, just for the law piece. Okay,
I was just addressing that piece with the law to ensure that the SHAC is hitting those particulars. The law, we could use a rubric for that possibly.
Well, and don't we also use Mr. Lopez to help with the law to ensure that we're...
For sure, and we have a legal department that will advise us on that. When you say the word ensure, I just want to make sure we've got ourselves covered.
You want to ensure?
To ensure that we're
insured, yes.
That what we're reading is accurate, true and accurate, so.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Mr. Byer?
I have one question about policy DP.
Can you tell me a page number, please?
Man,
oh, I see it.
You're going to ask me that.
Page 38.
38. Page 38. About school counselors. And I guess maybe there's some clarification. I tried to read the other page that we had in the packet that explained a little bit of this, I think, but talks about school counselors will spend 80% of the counselor's work time on duties that are components of a comprehensive school counseling program. And then it goes on to say that if they can't meet the 80%, well, we'll just change the plan and give them a different percentage. So I was curious if somebody might be able to explain sort of what that 80% actually means, and why is it so specific with that, and then why can we just sort of change it whenever we want to if we don't like it?
I'm gonna try to give it my best shot. So it's a pretty ambiguous number, 80-20. Essentially, what the Senate Bill 179, I believe, the intent is to increase the amount of time that counselors are in front of kids, which we all agree is the right thing. The challenge is to be able to measure if that is in fact less or more than 80% or 20. But the reason that statute came forward is there was a lot of other duties that had counselors working outside of the comprehensive guidance program. And so it's an attempt to increase their face-to-face engagement and interaction with kids. So there's a rubric that has actually been created to try to measure the time and space that a counselor does. My wife's a counselor, so I'm pretty familiar with this. And she'll tell you, yes, I'm tired. But essentially, it's really to try to figure out a way to make sure that the other duties don't overshadow the primary duties, is really what that is. And so we're working collaboratively to try to figure that out, and there's a lot of nuances that we have to work through to ensure that our counselors are not being removed from the important work of working directly with kids.
Okay. So that the ability for developing a revised job description for a school counselor that addresses a percentage gives us that flexibility to.
Yeah, and Mr. Byer, you got to remember, these policies don't, we look at it through our lens of Northeast, but think of it through a very small district where there may be only one counselor, right? And I think that's why they give some flexibility in here, because we have some very small school districts and small schools. With that, I mean, our goal will try to maintain, we're going to try for the 80-20 always. We want our counselors in front of kids. Some good things with STAR testing moving online. We're going to have a lot of those things alleviated off of them next year. So you can start to see how this piece, and again, it just boils down to, I think, over time, you've heard it, we always add things to people's plates. Right. And it's really coming back to saying, let's look at what our counselors should be doing and making sure that's what they're doing.
Yeah. It just, with a lot of this language, a lot of times they give you the shall spend 80% of their time and then realize that there's a real world, and that doesn't always happen. So,
right.
Okay.
And I think the goal, sir, is that if the district sees that more time needs to be spent elsewhere other than the comprehensive guidance program, then you as a board can make the decision to say, we're going to go 70-30 or something like that, but you will have to rewrite the job description. That way, someone who applies for the job is fully aware that their job will not be completely following the comprehensive guidance program.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, on that same page, and Peggy, this is something that you may have to ask the question of. It confuses me as to why we go from number 6 to number 1 to number 7.
Thank you. That was what I was waiting to get.
We asked that same question.
That's a task.
Okay. Oh,
I can answer that. I asked about that, and I can tell you that I didn't get a great response. They said it was something about something happening in the background, but I assure you that if you adopt it, it's going to be clean. And then I looked at the clean copy, and yes, the numbering goes away.
Okay.
So yeah, we pointed that out. It's very strange. And this number 7 that pops up at the bottom. So it's, if you adopt it like it is, it's going to come out clean when they post it. They assured us. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Those kind of things make my brain go crazy. And then on page 41, policy, I'm sorry, EIE. I'm going to have to pull up my glasses. EIEIO. Oh, yeah, EIE. Why did we cross through kinder for promotion where we have promotions for the other ones? Just curious.
So kinder is not required as a grade level, and so I guess they assume that you don't need to have that rule. I'm not sure of their thinking, but that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody else have anything else on this? If not, you're gonna follow up on some things. We're gonna all follow up on some things.
I'll
and
bring
so-
I'll bring you back a kind of a list at the next meeting of all the different clubs and sponsors and organizations. Kind of give you some dollar amounts to look at. That way, then you have the information to kind of take a look at and see. And then Dan, you can do some digging as to is it a pretty easy feature to report it out, and can we make that happen?
Okay, and then we'll look about that EHAA too. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the first reading of the above listed local policies included in Update 118?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item B, resolutions. 1, possible action regarding Career and Technical Education Month. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Mike, members of the board, executive staff, and guests, I would like to ask Justin Missildine to come forward for this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. It is my honor to be here this evening to present this resolution for consideration. The Northeast ISD Career and Technical Education Department consists of more than 220 administrators, teachers, and support staff who help provide unique instructional programs to any ISD students. This school year alone, more than 16,000 secondary students are enrolled in over 150 career and technical education courses, preparing students for a wide range of careers, from automotive technicians to engineers, from culinary arts to nursing, from veterinarians to electricians, from cybersecurity analysts to many more. To recognize the hard work of our teachers and to highlight the many achievements of career and technical education students, I am recommending the approval of this resolution to declare February as Career and Technical Education Month.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution recognizing the month of February as Career and Technical Education Month?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Justin. All right, item 2, possible action regarding board resolution regarding wage payments during school closure. Mr. Jimenez.
President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, Shala Wooden, our executive director, will address this item.
Good evening. Tonight, we present a resolution requesting for you to approve paying our employees that were required not to report to work on January 20th, February 3rd, and February 4th due to school closures. In addition to the forecast of inclement weather, we also wanted to consider that the weather conditions and the closures of our surrounding school districts would have further exacerbated our current shortages of staff due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So with all those factors, we present to you this resolution. In addition, you'll see that right now we're awaiting further guidance from TA regarding a possible waiver that we can submit and be approved for regarding these instructional days missed. Therefore, tonight at this time, we do not have any further budgetary considerations for you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? So is it possible that we would have to make up some of those days if we don't get the waiver? Yes.
It's possible. We just, I mean,
We don't know.
Again, they don't move necessarily at our speed. So we're all kind of waiting. I mean, look, we have the minutes. That's not an issue.
Okay.
All right. The minutes isn't. Where it comes down to, because we're an ADC school district, that extended school year, right? That's where it is. It's not just minutes, it's days. And so if you'll recall, we used that half-day ADA funding for our elementary schools for last year to provide a much more robust program during the summer to the tune of, instead of 5,000, we had 10,000 kids participating. So it's that type of piece that we're working through. The agency did give us, give ADC school districts one waiver through staffing, which I think applies to our first time. Don't know about the other ones. There is talk about not penalizing those of us that chose a 180 by making those days up. We just haven't heard officially yet.
Okay.
So once we do, and I anticipate that hopefully before spring break, we'll let everyone know.
Okay. So.
Because remember, I have 2 students in my house that want to know too.
Well, I know we have graduation starting and all that stuff, so, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution of the board regarding wage payments during emergency school closures for the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Shala. Item 3, possible action regarding retention supplement for the 2021-2022 school year. And we have someone signed up to speak.
Number 1.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, and staff. My name is Adonis Sherman, and I'm the president of the Northeast Education Association, and I'm speaking on behalf of our membership. The Northeast Education Association sent a proposal to the Board of Trustees in January asking for the following considerations. Based on the district's financial capacity for the 21-22 academic school year, as determined by the Board of Trustees, the district will reimburse the following retention stipends from ESSER funding. Certified employees up to $600, less applicable taxes and deductions. All classified employees up to $300 with less applicable taxes and deductions. Substitute teachers, $120. And we're asking for disbursement of these retention stipends would be during the month of June. The rest of the criteria is included in your presentation, and we would thank you very much for your consideration for this. We, as teachers and staff, you all know it's been a year. So we would appreciate your consideration on the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jimenez.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Whitten will continue this next piece. Thank you.
Good evening again. We are very happy to be able to present to you a retention supplement that we'd like to propose in the resolution before you for a second one-time payment in the month of March. This is based on availability of ESSER funds that we've evaluated, and it would be to offer any employee that was hired on or before February 1st. They would be deemed eligible for this. Our full-time teachers and librarians would receive $575. All other eligible employees would get 1% of their annualized midpoint with a minimum amount of $250. We'd like to propose this payment in March. We do recognize the commitment of our staff and just the difficult last month and a half that we've experienced, and we think this would be a wonderful way to reward them and recognize that. We do add in this particular resolution that we base this conditioned upon the employee completing their work schedule. As a retention, we are hoping to retain them for the rest of the school year, and as such, there is criteria outlined that should they not fulfill that, then that would be an overpayment that we'd work with our payroll department on. But again, we hope that this will encourage all of our employees to continue and finish the rest of the year strong.
Okay. Thank you, Shala. Does anybody have any comments about this? No, I think it's great. And I hope, yeah. We always wish it was more, right?
But Ms. Huey, I will tell you, we continue to reevaluate it and look at, we talked a lot about when to do something like this. And after the month of January with what our folks experienced out on the campuses, it's a good time right now. They need to know that that they matter and that we're trying our best to take care of them.
So do I have a motion to approve the retention supplement for the second semester of the 2021-2022 school year?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Shala.
Thank you.
Item C, instruction and campus administration. 1, possible action regarding 2021-2022 modified scheduled for state assessment testing days waiver. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Micah, members of the board, executive staff, and guests. I would like to ask Dr. Munoz to come forward and address this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Tonight we are presenting the modified schedule state assessment waiver for testing days. This waiver allows the district to modify the schedule of classes for students who are not being tested to report and attend school after the state assessment testing period has ended, therefore reducing the interruptions during the test period. Students who are not being tested must still meet the maximum 2 through 4 hour requirement for funding. And this is in accordance to the SAW 3.6.6. Once submitted, this waiver will be good for 3 years. So we are looking at the 21-22 school year, 22-23 school year, and the 23-24 school year.
Any questions about this? No? All right, do I have a motion to approve the 2021 to 2024 modified schedule for state assessment testing days waiver?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Item 2, possible action regarding pre-K expansion. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I would like to ask Jennifer Gutierrez and April Muskis to come forward for this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. This evening, we bring to you a proposal to expand our pre-K options. I would like to thank Dr. Paul Keeneland, principal of Pre-K Academy, for being here with us on Valentine's Day, and it's also his wife's birthday, so happy birthday to Mrs. Keeneland. Can I have the clicker?
Yeah.
Am I in trouble, Paul?
You're paying for his dinner.
It'll work. Thank you. So we want to begin by highlighting our early childhood vision and mission statements. As you can see here, the focus really is on ensuring that we are developing the foundations early on so that our students are ready for the demands of kindergarten. Additionally, it is really important for us to be able to connect with our families as early as possible. As you know, our district is extremely diverse, and so we need to provide different options across our district to ensure that our students are getting those foundations and experiences needed to be ready for academics. So thinking about our vision, we really want to make sure that we can connect with our families as early as possible, while at the same time developing a long-range plan to sustain enrollment at Pre-K Academy by adding 3-year-olds. That is our proposal this evening. So a little background on Pre-K Academy. They opened in the year 2019-2020, opened strong with enrollment of 370 students. And the pandemic, of course, caused the decline in enrollment in the year 2020-2021, as you can see here, not just at the Pre-K Academy, but across early childhood and Pre-K and kinder, we saw a decline in enrollment. And so we're slowly getting back on track. As you can see this year, they currently have 222 students enrolled, and they have seen an increase of the enrollment increasing through these winter months. So as the year has gone on, their enrollment has increased slightly. They do have a capacity of 400 students. So again, thinking about how we can maximize that space and provide this option for our families would be really beneficial. At the same time, it enables us to connect with our families through those parent connections. They have a very strong parental involvement program and being able to support our at-risk students sooner. So currently across the district, we offer pre-K at 37 campuses plus Pre-K Academy. We have this year enrollment of 1,680 students. This is the most current enrollment at our Pre-K classrooms. And we see that we have 608 seats available based on our current enrollment. And so really looking at maximizing those seats, we have expanded our options for tuition as well. Currently, tuition is only available at the elementary schools in the Reagan cluster, and then Huebner, Bulverde, and Redland. So knowing that if seats are available, we can open those not just to our students who qualify, but to parents who would like to who would like to join into the program through tuition. So with that advertisement, which just opened on January 11th, our enrollment application for the 22-23 school year has only been open about a month. We already have an increase of tuition applications of 50% across the district and 8% at the pre-K academy. I am going to hand over the clicker here to April Muskis, our Assistant Director of Early Childhood. She's going to continue with the next section.
Thank you and good evening. So keeping the information that we just heard in mind, in the state of Texas, only 7% of eligible 3-year-olds attend public pre-K. That's about 15,000 students that are enrolled in pre-K 3. This means that there are 208,000 children eligible but unserved. Just a reminder, there are 3 primary qualifiers for pre-K, which are income, language, and military connected. So in January, we launched a community survey to measure interest in a 3-year-old program at the Pre-K Academy at West Avenue. Based on the responses received, 75% indicated they were very likely or somewhat likely to register their child. And when asked about transportation, 1/3 of the responses indicated a likelihood to utilize transportation services for their 3-year-old. A child's most profound synaptic activity occurs between birth and the age of 5. 90% of neurological development happens by the time a child enters kindergarten. Children who attend high-quality preschool programs are less likely to utilize special education services or be retained, and are more likely to graduate from high school and college. Access to preschool unlocks education equality for at-risk students and provides not only academic benefits, but also access to health and nutrition services. Our NEISD students and families could have the opportunity to learn, build connections, and participate in our community sooner than ever before. By enrolling 3-year-old students, we will see increases in pre-K enrollment, within district retention, and kindergarten readiness. The Pre-K Academy at West Avenue provides the ideal location for our youngest students. Facilities are designed specifically for preschool-age students and exploratory classrooms. So as seen here, a chef demonstration in the market classroom and reenactments at the farm encourage meaningful play and creativity. The dedicated staff, passionate about early childhood, guide students through discovery experiences.
This next slide offers you some feedback from our employees. So along with Dr. Micah's goal to retain the best employees in the district, he gathered some feedback through an employee appreciation and benefits survey. And as you can see here, our NEISD employees really value employee assistant programs. It was rated very high. And ranked third was discounts to local childcare facilities for employees. They had an opportunity to answer open-ended questions about potential benefits, and they all aligned to seeking childcare options to fit their schedule and income availability, as well as they're currently struggling with childcare options for school-aged children. So thinking about the results from the survey and the feedback from our employees, we would like to extend our early childhood opportunities to our NEISD employees by offering a 20% tuition discount to any of our pre-K classrooms across the district. And if the 3-year-old program is approved today, then also for the 3-year-old program at the Pre-K Academy. Currently, tuition is $525 a month, and that is paid over 10 months, so 10 months that they pay the tuition for pre-K. So at this time, we can take any questions, and Dr. Keeneland is also here if you have any specific questions about the school.
Questions?
I do. First of all, I love the Pre-K Academy so much. If you haven't been there, y'all need to go see what Dr. Conlon and that staff and the district is doing is amazing. It's the most fun place to be, and I wish I could go to school there. I would fit right in. I love the idea of this. It's a little intimidating to think of a 3-year-old, though, getting on a school bus. How would that work? I mean, that's intimidating to me.
So we would definitely look at options to support our students if that was, something that our community was really interested in. So we would create a plan to be able to support the students and transition them on the bus.
Well, I can see that the 3-year-olds would get so much out of being at the pre-K academy. That's a total win as far as I could see. I am concerned. I mean, they're awfully little. Got a little 3-year-old that I should be babysitting right now, but.
And Miss Huey, that's why we're starting it at one site. When this came to me, it was a little,
point, yeah.
maybe slightly more ambitious. And after we had some discussions, what we want to be able to do, and Paul was a big piece in it as they visited, was really, I know Paul feels confident in this and believes in this path. By starting it there, we can work through. I mean, we hired Paul solely to be at a pre-K academy. That's as close to an expert as we really have out there. I mean, it's Paul. Boots on the ground in a school. And so those are the things that Paul's going to help us work through. And as we look at it, before we think about pushing it to potentially a larger scale in the future.
Well, like I said, I dearly love it. I wish every single child had the opportunity to be on that campus and to be a part of what they are doing there, because it's really incredible. And like I said, I want to go to school there.
Any other? Yeah.
I guess my big concern of all this, we're short-staffed across the district when it comes to teachers, bus drivers, food services, and this is obviously not a must-have. This would be a nice addition, but I'm concerned doing it right now, and we have, I would say, uncertainty for next year with teachers in particular, but staffing across, getting people to come. So now we're adding new requirements, and this is something maybe do we revisit this next year when things stabilize out? Because obviously there's been a lot of transition going on, but I just have serious concerns of trying to continue to expand when we right now can't even fill our current requirements in grades 1 through 12, which is our requirement by law in the classroom. So we're short-staffed, and we obviously saw the TAPR. We've got lots of room to grow, as does all districts. But this, to me, I think the timing maybe would be better a year from now. It's just a thought of mine to revisit it next year when things have maybe stabilized out. I don't know if there's any other thoughts from you.
We have seats open, though, right? I mean, we have capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'll tell you, I've been volunteering a lot as a pre-K in the pre-K classrooms, and it seems like those classrooms currently are not full, that there's room for additional. Now, I haven't been to the pre-K academy, but just at the other campuses that I've been at. So I don't know that it's necessarily looking for another teacher. I could be wrong. But I know you wanted to speak a minute ago to something.
I did want to respond to Ms. Huey. First of all, we are taking substitutes if you'd like to spend more time at the Pre-K Academy. And we do currently have 3-year-old students at our campus. They're half-day students in special education programs, so I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. And we have a great staff who takes good care of them, and we're ready for more. One of the things that we had discussed in a recent meeting is, not just opening the door wide to any 3-year-old possibly who wants to come in. There potentially could be limits. I believe our priority is to serve 4-year-old students and then look at how much room we have to expand to 3-year-olds. So I just wanted to clarify that and add that.
So, and if I could add, that we are required to serve certain 4-year-old students in our program. And what's happening is that seats are being left open, and when those seats aren't filled, that staff is still employed with us. And so, and to Dr. Micah's point about not blowing the doors wide open, but being very intentional to make sure we maximize the staff that we have, and then making sure we don't hurt other program and grade levels as we look at a staffing structure.
So I'm kind of piggybacking off of Mrs. Hurie's issue of transportation for a 3-year-old. My little grandson will be 3 next month, and my son still puts him in a car seat. Would they, and you know, you have the question if transportation was available, would they still need a car seat?
That's something that may need to be considered. I'm not the transportation expert, but definitely that would be a consideration.
I know we're spending a lot of time talking to trans, but I'm just wondering how many parents are actually going to vie for transportation. It's there, and again, I think next month when Mr. Villarreal brings to you kind of an update with finances and also the demographic shift that's happened in the district, I think you're going to see why this path is probably a good one for us to go down as our district is changing and continues to change very rapidly. So I think it behooves us to get with a lot of our students earlier to provide them with the necessary skills to be successful in school. Because I'm kind of leaving a cliffhanger, but I think when you see the shift that has happened, even within the last year, when I saw the report given to me by Mr. Jarrett and visited with Mr. Villarreal, it was shocking to see the growth in our low socioeconomic population within the last year to 2 years. It is, and where that shift has happened is even more interesting because it's not where you maybe would predict it would be. There are some of our schools that have tripled their low socioeconomic status. So, providing these types of programs and starting at a pre-K academy, because again, and Paul, thank you for saying it, our priority is going to be 4-year-olds. And then if there is some space there to dip our toe in the water with this, in an environment that, one, it is a school designed for little people. Like, that is the only reason that school is there is for little people. So it's a great place to do it with somebody that knows it, that values it, for us to do it in a way to then reevaluate in a year to see, is this worth even expanding? And if so, how so? Because there are a lot of things, if we take it out of the pre-K academy, for us to consider at an elementary school. Because some of our schools are not designed for 3-year-olds. And I may have a little more heartburn at that point because I think financially it's going to potentially create a challenge for us to expand it. So those are a lot of things to consider. This is the way in which the proposal reads tonight is a pretty conservative way to step into this without committing a great deal of resources, without strapping us for staffing. Because this last year we had to shift some of your teachers away from there due to the low enrollment. And these are people that really wanted to be at that academy. They weren't looking to be at a traditional school. So I think it's a good way to, when you look at the 370 number, I don't really look at the last 2 years as much because, as you all know up here, I've talked about it many times, where we saw the loss of enrollment the most across the nation was pre-K, K, and 1. So, my hesitancy from the get-go was we got to make sure, one, we fill the 4-year-old seats that are expected to be there because we do need to provide it to them. But then if we have some seats there, sure, let's go ahead and let a few 3-year-olds come in. Let's try it. Let's give it a shot without stretching the resources of the district. Because I'm not going to do that.
Dr. Micah, back to the financial and the resources and everything. And I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the financial implications. However, I wonder what is the impact when we are taking care of these children at this age, and we're already seeing these learning delays. Now we have this generation coming up that's faced more challenges than other children have. The financial impact down the road might be able to be addressed at this 3 and 4 year old level, to where in the upper grades they're not having the challenges that they would carry with them without the help that we could give them at the pre-K academy.
Yeah, and Ms. Hewitt, I'm solely talking about our facility renovations potentially. That's
I understand,
it.
but
and
yeah.
so I'm just letting you know that if we had to go down that road at multiple sites, I don't believe we have the resources in which to do it.
No, we've got the resource right there.
Right here is a resource that's designed and ready to do it, which is why being there makes sense. And then through that to reassess it, if you all approve it, in a year to look at it and see its viability to push outward. And do we want to do it? Do we not? Where does it make sense? Where do we have the capacity? Our elementary schools, y'all, there are a lot of them that they're under 300. And so, again, the other thing, too, is if we build a connection, and Ms. Gutierrez alluded to this, if we build a connection with our families of a 3-year-old and start that relationship early on, the chances of them remaining with us increases, right? So there's a lot of reasons into it. But, again, I want to take a cautious, optimistic approach to it, is the way I frame it. Because I've seen Paul in action. I know what he's capable of over there. And I know he'll give us honest feedback as to the challenges and the advantages to it. And I think the other piece is to then start watching these students move through our system and look at how they perform versus students who did not go through. I think that becomes the pieces. By attending pre-K academy as a 3-year-old, in the 3rd grade, are they performing differently than students who did not? You heard that, Mr. Jarrett, right? Good, sir.
So the timeline is to start next school year? Okay.
Yes, the proposal is to begin.
I didn't
We
see
can't
it.
start this year. It would be for next year to begin, one, with 3-year-olds at only pre-K academy, and then to extend that discount to our employees.
And that's a great idea, I think, to do that. Be anxious to see how many employees take up that offer.
I mean, it was the 3rd most selected. And if you'll remember, that survey, Alex, are you still here? No, he stepped out. That was the survey that I did at Convocation at the beginning of the year. And we had 3,800 people take it, teachers. So that was the 3rd thing they chose the most. In fact, in the last week or so, I've had 2 different employees email me because, again, as inflation is happening and things, they're looking at ways to save a little bit money. And I had a teacher, actually from your district, Mr. Hilliard, that had emailed me and said, have you considered a reduction in tuition? And so my email back to her was, hold on till Monday night, we'll see.
Can I add something about that? We currently have 49 applications so far for the 22-23 school year from our own employees.
Okay.
And this year we're serving 55.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Jennifer, do you know how many of those qualify pre-K? Do
Those
any
are
of
all
them?
tuition-based.
So they're
Those are all
tuition-based.
tuition-based.
What's our percentage of tuition-based versus those that qualify, do we know? Just in general, if anybody's got that.
On a district scale, I'm not sure. At my campus, it's less than 10%
Oh,
tuition.
Okay. And that, Ms. Gutierrez, the $550 you said per month, would that be the discounted rate, or that is the tuition?
$525 a month is regular
Regular
price,
tuition.
yes.
Okay.
And they pay that 10 months.
Okay.
So to answer your question, it's off of that 525. That is not their, we're proposing a 20% reduction to that. My finance man is over there making certain. Go ahead, Mr. Villarreal. There's a mic.
No, no, I was just saying the 20%, the 525, they get a $105 reduction discount, so they'd be paying $420
Okay,
a month.
thanks.
So, Mr. Byer, we have 108 tuition seats out of the 1,600 total that you saw enrollment on one of those slides.
Thank you.
And really quick, Ms. Oates verified that the ECSE 3-year-old kiddos do ride the bus and they use car seats.
Ah, awesome. Anybody else have a question you want to get answered really quickly?
I do.
Yes?
Yeah. I'm unclear about, I know what you mean, Mr. Hilliard, about the employees or the short staff, but I'm unclear your other reasons why you might want to hold off on this.
My primary concern right now is we have a lot of uncertainty, and our primary focus by law is 1 through 12, and we have a lot of work to do there. So to me, I think that's the primary focus. And Dr. Mike's talking about a cautious approach, but I think this is one that maybe we wait next year when we get the data from the testing from the 2017 pre-K, the first class. They'll be third graders, correct? And they'll be able to get tested. So then we'll have a snapshot and see if this is making a difference, and then we can decide to go and expand from there. That's just where I'm coming from on that. We have a lot of uncertainty and continuing to have a high level of uncertainty.
And to clarify, we have we do have capacity at least at, well, in most of the classes, but we will be doing what we've been doing so far, which is serving the 4-year-olds first, and then filling
I think
in
this
where
is
we can.
important to note. If we have enough 4-year-olds who qualify, we don't have a choice whether we serve them or not. We have to serve them. And so this whole idea may not happen if those 4-year-olds come forward and they need those seats because they're the priority. So this is essentially looking at it from a sense of if we have 400 seats and only 350 are taken, then those 3-year-olds are essentially filling those seats that's left over because the staff are already there.
So we're not creating more staffing, we're just filling seats that are available. That's the way I'm understanding it, correct?
In theory, I mean, of course, if your numbers drop, to Mr. Hilliard's point, then of course you then would have to staff specifically for that group. But right now, what we've been doing for the past couple of years, when Pre-K Academy staffing dropped, we essentially removed staff from over there, filled over at another campus, and we do that anyway, and we meet in staffing meetings pretty often, looking at those numbers, and if the numbers drop, then we move staff to make sure that we're maximizing our employees.
Okay, okay. All right, any other questions? No?
Could I
All right.
make one more point?
Yes.
Excuse me. This is my own numbers, no scientific background necessarily, but over the past 3 years, and I know that the last 2 years have not been probably typical, but in year 1, year 2, and year 3, since the first day of school, throughout the year, my campus has enrolled anywhere between 40 to 70 students after the first day of school. So as we're talking about possibly adding 3-year-olds, we don't want to necessarily fill them all up. We want to possibly consider, leaving space for the students who come later in the year and we're required to serve them.
Right, okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the proposed plan to add 3-year-old students to the Pre-K Academy at West Avenue and offer a 20% Pre-K tuition discount to all NEISD employees?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, I have Mr. Leos and Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The motion carries. Item 3, possible action regarding agreement between district and production company Apartment 3C, Inc. to participate in Band Together. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. This next agenda item does seem to be a little bit unusual. It's a little different, but I really believe that there's some great opportunity here. As you all are aware, Daniel Morrison, who was a former band director at Reagan High School, he left and went to California after the 2021 school year. And he and his sister together created a production company called Apartment 3C. And he's brought a pretty exciting proposition for us to consider tonight. And so Mr. Morrison wants to create a documentary series that focuses on the hard work, leadership, and commitment of high school band that, high school bands encompass. And the goal is really to feature the Reagan High School band program in a positive light and show all viewers what high school band is about, having this positive, lasting impact on students and on families. And so the producers would ensure that individuals appearing on camera would have the proper releases and any parental agreements to consent to this type of filming. And so what we're doing tonight is we're asking permission for you all to start the planning process for this opportunity. If granted, we will keep you posted throughout the process. If it's granted that we move forward, later on there would be more formal agreements as the process moves forward. So this is just that initial, trying this out.
Just to talk about a process and a plan, and
Right.
it's not necessarily signing an agreement.
It's signing an agreement to start the process.
Okay.
Just start. And I don't know the business, but I do know that they've got to pitch to financiers. They've got to, check on production. I mean, there's a whole lot that has to happen before we could even move forward with this, because if somebody doesn't pick this up and there's not financing, it wouldn't go anywhere. So this is just a step to make sure that we can start doing that.
That he's got a school to showcase.
Correct.
Basically. Okay. Sorry, I was asking questions and you might not have been finished.
No, that's perfect.
Question, does anybody else have any questions? Or anyone have any questions or comments? Ms. Williams?
So does he have to focus on one school, or can he focus on several schools in the district?
I think right now it's focusing on one school, and because he's familiar with the campus as a former band director, I think that's where he's focusing. I don't know what the future would bring with that, but right now it's just one school.
His proposal, Ms. Williams, was not. It was primarily focused on one. We didn't say to him, well, we don't like that. We want you to focus on all of them. And I think from a district side of it anyway, trying to coordinate with 7 different schools and parents, it's going to be a challenge as a nutshell anyway. I mean, so Mr. Morrison called me first about this. He has my number from when he worked here. And his whole piece, as he explained it, is we need some positive in the world. And these kids in band work so hard. And people really don't understand the time, the commitment, the energy that they have through the summer. And what he's trying to do is chronicle an entire season following. I'm trying to think. It's like, when they document like the Cowboys, right? They follow them through a season. He wants to follow. He wants to follow a band through a season and showcase all that effort, all that work through a positive lens.
That's when you get season 2. So you move on to the next band.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a series.
Well, the potential, I'm sure, is there.
I'm going to look for it on Netflix.
I've got really interesting concept. Obviously, reality TV season 1, 2. Have you talked to the band director and the band Booster Club? Are they're aware and kind of bought into this? Because I'm assuming they obviously want to be, have buy-in. Because I know there's a concern about how short their summer training season is. But
Right, they bought into it. I also spoke to the principal, wanted to make sure that she had full support, and she knew about it way before I did, and so she was definitely excited about the opportunity to showcase her school in a positive light.
So everyone's on board. That sounds good. And it sounds like you already understood. This is just the initial negotiations, but all the legal liabilities, logistics, cost to the district, all that stuff will come back in a more formal agreement, assuming they get financed and we get to that point.
Yes, sir. So this is just the initial. Can we even start looking to see if somebody will finance this.
Okay, great, thank you. That's it.
Well, and speaking to that, it says no budgetary consideration, but just, I guess before we sign this, check the language, because one of the line items under development says that any ISD shall cooperate with the producer in connection with the production of sales tape or other promotional materials. I'd be curious what the word cooperate means, if they're gonna handle all that, or if they're asking us to help finance some of the promotional materials.
Part of that is just giving them the okay to
Yeah,
show.
if it's that type of stuff, it's fine. I just want to make sure we don't get into a deal where all of a sudden they're asking us for 50% of the cost on some.
We're not
tape
paying
to go
anything.
pitch anything. Okay.
I mean, honestly,
great. No, that's-
if there were any costs associated for us, I would push pass.
Yeah.
You know, we had our legal counsel review this to make certain they were okay with it. And the real big thing embedded in this, and Mr. Jimenez, I don't think you mentioned it, it's the intellectual property piece that it's going to be theirs. It's not going to be
Right.
our video.
Right. Well, and it also, there's another part that speaks to, I think it was the exclusivity part of it, where it says, any ISD shall not attach themselves or submit to any third party any project in any media that is similar to the series. And so I'm assuming that means just for the lifetime of this particular production and not in perpetuity. So
That's our understanding. They wouldn't want there to be a competing producer doing the same thing at another school at the same time.
okay. Yeah, just make sure that sort of at the same time, I guess, is where I'm going with that. We don't want to limit ourselves to say we're never going to do another piece like this for another band. So anyway, just things to look at, that if we have assurances that there's no budgetary considerations, I think it's great exposure for not only that school, but for the district as a whole.
One last consideration, practically speaking, is the Reagan setup for where the band practices. The impact of a production with, I don't know how big of a production Mr. Morrison and them would have, but obviously just how it's going to impact the rest of the campus and the student if he's there and a group are filming, if they have trailers and some of that, depending on their setup. We just need to give that practical logistical consideration, which I'm sure y'all probably will, but that loop there is really small.
Yes, sir.
And get back to, there's not a whole lot of extra space on the band practice
Yeah,
area.
Mr. Hilliard, I mean, in the end, look, school has to be priority first, right?
Sure.
I mean, so
That's-
they're going to have to work around the logistics of us.
Okay. Great.
You know, my daughter's been in band dance for 3 years. So there are just some pieces there, even as far as filming in the band halls and so forth. But in the end, we're not going to let them park a trailer in that front loop. Like, that's just not going to happen.
I didn't think so. It just,
School's got to happen first, and then they can video later.
And again, I think having a former band director who knows the layout, who understands the process, is going to definitely be pro-school when it comes to that.
I figured as much, as making sure. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Do I have a motion to approve the band together agreement as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Laos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item D, consent. 1, internal audit, A, internal audit plan amendment. 2, business services, A, 50,000 purchases. 3, operations, A, 2022 annual construction prevailing wage rates approval for Northeast ISD construction programs. B, ESSER 3 funds, HVAC unit ventilator and energy recovery unit replacement project bid packages A and B, 12 campuses, bid award approval. C, ESSER 3 funds, Madison High School Central Plant chiller replacement project bid authorization approval. D, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 2015 bond, M&O, and ESSER 3 program funds design and construction requirements. 4, minutes from December 2021 and January 2022. 5, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
I'd like to, item 3B.
Okay.
Could I pull item D1 and D4, please?
D1,
Oh, and there's
Or
just
D1A, sorry.
D1A, and D4? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, do I have a motion to approve consent without item D1A, D3B, and D4?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Byer, D3B.
3B. Yeah, this might be a quick question. So we have the HVAC unit ventilator replacement project, listed 12 different schools, I believe. Several of these have, or actually all of them, either have just one bid or two bids out of all the qualified bidders, I believe. And I'm wondering, are we allowed to accept a bid with only two bids or less than three? I thought we had to have three total to get an actual low bid. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I will just take the first one for the Wilshire campus, where there were 4 bidders and there was only one bid submitted.
I'm going to let Gary Sullivan, Executive Director of Construction Management and Engineering, address that.
And if there's mechanisms that allow us to do that, then I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure we're not missing something.
Good evening. Mr. Byer, in relation to your question, the district received 4 bids for Wilshire. We had 3 no bids, and we received a bid from Gillette.
Okay.
A no bid is a bid.
Okay, so that should have been my more specific question. Does a no bid count as a bid?
It does.
In that sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it looks like they just sort of, there were some that were maybe more either convenient for their schedules or whatever that allowed them to bid for some but not for others. And obviously you don't necessarily know what their reasoning was, I guess, but I guess.
I don't know their exact reasoning, but I can say that the contractors did tell the district that they have capacity issues and that they can only do so much. In fact, some of the bidders said, I can't take more than X number of schools. Even if I'm the lowest bid, I just can't do more than, and they put qualified in their bid, they can only do so much because it's a lot of work in 80 days.
Yeah. And
a lot of work.
I do like to see at least of the 4 bidders, we've split all those between 3 different contractors. So that's good to see. We're not loading up one contractor with 10 projects.
If I could have done 4, 4, and 4, that's what I would have done, but it didn't work out mathematically. But I will point out to you, if you do look at the bids highlighted in yellow, I mean, they're all within a pretty close range.
Yes.
With the low being 346,000 and the high being 625,000. I mean, other than that, pretty much if you would average these all out, it's all around 450K or so, which is kind of what we expected. You may ask, why did Gillette offer such high numbers for the 3 schools? It's almost double or triple what Elsie Mosul did. And I think that was his way of saying, I can only do 3 schools.
Yeah.
And these are the 3 schools I want to do.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think the no bid answers my question.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that we were following that, what we needed to.
Okay.
And we have advised all 4 of these bidders that there is a package C that will be going out to bid this week. And I've expressed to the Flow Air folks, please give us another shot at this, because he did bid 3 schools and he didn't get any. So I'm hoping that he's going to be very interested in package C, which has 5 campuses.
Thank
and
you
gives
very
us
much.
good pricing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so Mr. Byer, do I have a motion to approve D3B?
Yes, I move to approve D3B.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Hilliard, D1A.
Okay, on the internal audit plan, it's page 122 of our packet. Under number 9, the operational compliance audit. In the original one from November, we had the Northeast Police Department in there. In this one, they were just completely removed. In looking back at the risk-based model planning, when we did this sheet, it's one of the attachments for those that may not be familiar. They had 25. which is either audit requested or audit required. So I guess my first question is, was it a requested audit from Chief Campbell and Campbell and the staff, or was it a audit required?
It's not, that was, sorry, not an audit that was required. It was a requested audit.
Okay, so that answers that question. And then I'm assuming Chief and them are aware they're not going to get audited this year, and they're okay with that?
It was not their request.
It was not their request. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so that was just your decision making based on priorities.
It was a different entity's request within the district.
Okay, so that was the request. Okay,
Mhm.
so just making sure that we, with that change in the plan, because obviously you have limited hours
Sure.
to do that, but to go from quite a bit to zero was a surprise. So, okay.
They also had a change in staffing level, and the requests for the 2 audits came from my division.
Okay.
And I would just prefer to have the other one, the one that she's doing.
Okay. I think that answers my question. That's what I wanted to know. Just trying to figure out whether it was a request or a required type audit for that section. Okay.
Sure. The requested, just so you know, the required audits on the plan are the mandatory audits under item 6 under mandatory, and
Okay.
so that extra one fell under those operational and compliance areas.
Okay. So,
Yeah, so it's not. It was just.
okay. I just was using the metric, and it had the 25 from that. That's why I wasn't sure about it. So
Sure.
you answered my question. I appreciate it. That's
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
the only question I have.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve D1A?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Hilliard, D4.
We got all the minutes, and I know we had the previous discussion last meeting about my abstention on 13 December. And I know nothing was changed, but my question is procedurally, can we pull out the 13 December minutes and have a separate that, or is this all minutes together because it's one consent item on that? Because all the other items, all the other ones look good to me, but I don't know if we can pull them out or if we just have to vote on all of them as a group. And if we can't,
So what you're wanting to know is, can we do approve minutes from December 2021 as
Separate.
an item, and then approve minutes from January 2022 as an item?
yes,
It's
probably.
not listed as
Okay, so we may not be able to if that's not, I understand.
I mean, right, it's listed as one, so
Okay.
I don't know that we can separate it out.
And that was my question. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure because obviously there was some back and forth on that
Okay.
and we hadn't got that resolved. So, okay.
Okay. All right, so do you have a motion to approve item D4?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from, well, actually, no, I won't actually. Somebody else can. I'm sorry. I did.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Actually,
moved. Okay, so Terry, you're making a motion to approve
December and
D4.
January.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, the motion carries. Item 11, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, second quarter investment report. Those have been provided for you. Item 12, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for items to be placed on a future agenda and our requests for reports from the administration. Do I have a board member wishing to request something? Mr. Byers.
No, go ahead, Ms. Huey.
Go ahead.
The speaker earlier that was asking about the books, I didn't know to get a report. Again, I don't want to take up a lot of staff time right now when there's so many other things going on, but it would be nice to get some information.
Will you speak to that?
A brief something.
Ms. Huey, if I might add to that, I think specifically if we can get for sure the number of books initially pulled, which we already know, the number of books that have been returned to the shelves, the action of those that have not been returned to the shelves, and then an update on, I know there was discussion about a review committee or whatever the process for reviewing books would be going forward. If you don't mind me adding that to your request.
No, that's great if we're on the same page with, that's great. Would you like to make the motion, Mr. Byer? You had more
So
detail.
moved.
So moved what
So
Mr. Byer
moved.
said.
Okay, and
No,
then,
I'm just kidding.
Ms. Huey, are you seconding it?
Yeah, I'll second it, but I would like to get Dr. Micah's input on it first. Before we vote.
You should have seen Mr. Jarrett. I looked over and we both nodded and we are good with that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 13, adjournment.
I
I'm
have
sorry.
one thing.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to remind all of us, TASB Grassroots for Region 20 is coming up on Wednesday. So if you haven't registered, please register. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. I will look more closely. Anybody have anything else? All right, adjournment, time is 8:24. Thank you all for being here.